Now, how many years have you been married?
41. I had it engraved inside my wedding ring just to make sure, it's been great. I mean, it's, she's been the real anchor of my life, considered all the deployments I've had, and, putting up with 3 kids, raising 3 kids when I wasn't there. And it was good. It was, she's the love of my life. I've spent, spending those 41 years with her. And like any family unit, it goes, ups and downs, hard times, good times, tough times, I'll just give you one example. We nearly lost our daughter at birth. And, that was pretty hard to go through. My wife had cancer. She had breast cancer, and those were hard times to go through out there. But, as a family, we just hung in there and stood side by side.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm actually 41 years old. So you've been married my entire life. I'm married 17 years myself. We have 4 kids. And you know what? It isn't always easy. And it's always at times I can look to guys like you that I admire that have been there, done that, stuck it out, and are that shining example for young couples out there all across America. What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Leese. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is General Keith Kellogg. General Kellogg is a highly decorated combat veteran. Some of his awards include the Silver Star and the Bronze Star. He's got a brand new book out right now titled War by Other Means, A General in the Trump White House. He was a national security advisor to Vice President Mike Pence, as well as many other roles he played throughout the Trump administration. It's a big honor to have him on the podcast today. The link to his new book is down there in the description below. While you're down there, tap that subscribe button, hit the like, and let's jump into it right now with General Kellogg on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, General Kellogg. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
All right, let's start it like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
Okay, I've got 3. I've got my oldest is a boy, and he's 37, and my second is a daughter, and she is 35. And the last one is my son, my youngest son, and we call him our Panama baby because it was one of those, oh, you're what, when my wife told me she was pregnant, and he is 28.
Wow, very cool. And obviously you've had a very long, extensive career here, a highly decorated combat veteran here. So if you could, and thank you for your service, if you could, please, just in a capsule form here, hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, well, I when I came into the military, I was, I'm a little bit older than most probably. I, went in out of ROTC, went to the Army, went to the 101st Airborne Division, deployed to Vietnam, eventually 2 deployments there. Went through the normal command tours that somebody would have in the infantry in the United States Army, eventually commanded the Army's 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, went up to Washington, D.C. for your obligatory staff tours, there. And then I left the military after 34 years. And I went into the business world. And then after the business world, spent about 10 years. I kind of one of those, okay, I've done that now. And I kind of searched out to do something different. And I decided to become an advisor to a political candidate. And some people said, well, they knew various candidates that were there to go advise in the 2016 presidential campaign. And I said, the only guy I really liked that I want to do it with is Donald J. Trump, and nobody knew him. So I went up there and offered my services, and he accepted it. And I used to say the reason he accepted it, when he asked after the interview, well, how much is it going to cost me? I said, nothing. I want to do it pro bono. He said, you're hired. He's a businessman. He'll take it for free in a heartbeat. And then after that, I went on the campaign with him. Eventually, after he won the election, went into the White House and on the national security team and spent every single day in the White House with him. It was the longest serving national security advisor he had. When you take Mike Flynn, who was the NSA, and then you added H.R. McMaster, and then John Bolton, and then Robert O'Brien, when you combine all their time together, I still beat them all by 33 days. And then at the end of that, came out of the White House and went back into the private sector to do work with a nonprofit here, a 501c3, called America First Policy Institute, and that's where I stand today.
Yeah, what an incredible journey you've had here, General. And if you could now, I know you said your oldest is 37, so take me back to the beginning for you. About how old were you then when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father change your perspective on life?
Yeah, well, I started late, and my wife likes to say she was, a teenager when we married. It's not true, but we started late, and we'd always wanted to have children, and Brian came along, and I came from a pretty good family, and my family was a very just a great family organization, and I kind of treated our family the same way as when Brian came along. being the first, we were in a military family, and but I was kind of settled for it, and I made sure I spent as much time as I could with him, even though I was in the military. For example, when I commanded the Army's 82nd Airborne Division, and he was old enough to play baseball, and I coached the baseball team. And when you're an Army Division commander and coach the baseball team, that's kind of an interesting mix. But I wanted to spend time with him and work, be with him as much as I could. And I just, just kind of settles you down. It gives you a pretty good basis in life going forward. And so, he's still, as I said, he's my favorite first son.
Yeah, well, very well said. And I'm always in awe by the men and women that serve, the way that they were able to balance that military lifestyle and family lifestyle. I can't even begin to imagine what that must be like for you guys. And one thing I talk about here on the show all the time, General, is that we got a fatherless crisis going on in our country. Yeah. We got so many kids growing up without a father or a father figure. Marriage has been devalued. Divorce rates are through the roof. Our kids are subjected to so much at such an early age now, too. And when they don't have that father figure around, it leads to devastating results in our society throughout. What's your take?
Yeah, I do. I think it's, the family. I mean, it's important to have a father figure there because it's the leadership issue, and not so much the breadwinner, because now you have both men and women into the workforce in significant numbers. But part of that is giving them the leadership, the care, and understanding of goals going forward that I think only a dad can give. I mean, that doesn't mean that single family parents are not critical. They are. But there's something about a father that allows them to kind of anchor, and he sees what the father has done and gives him values and support. And I think that's important to a family unit. And, that is, again, takes nothing away from single family parents. God bless them all. I mean, I know how hard that would be. But I think just a father figure, having it there, gives somebody to emulate going forward. At least I hope it does.
Yeah, and I always make that stipulation too, General, to make sure it doesn't take anything away from the single moms out there that are working miracles. So I agree with you there. And I wanted to jump in a little bit to your book here, War by Other Means. Obviously, Trump got slammed his entire time, but talking about a father, his kids are all very respectable, all successful people, well-spoken, well-mannered. I just had Eric Trump back on the podcast here for a second interview. So I think we never even got a chance to really even enjoy Trump's presidency because he came under attack right off the dribble here. So what was the reason you decided to write War by Other Means? What is it about, and what can we expect when we read it?
Yeah, and thanks for asking this. Is when I went on the presidential campaign in 2015 and 2016, I started to see a guy that wasn't what the public saw. In fact, the first time I talked to him, we were sitting in the office, had a talk. He went out and got on a press conference, and my first reaction was, "Who is this guy?" And because he's different when the clique lights came on. But when going through the campaign and then going into the White House and spending 4 years with him as one of his principal advisors in national security, but only one of the 5 senior advisors, one of the assistant president, that lasted the full time. And I used to say 2 of them don't count. And that's Ivanka and Jared because they're family, but there was only 3 of us that actually went through the entire time with the president. And my daughter, when I started talking about during the campaign about him, and also when we were in the White House, she said, "Dad, you need to write a book." And I said, "Well, I don't do books." And she said, "No, you really need to write a book, and it needs to be behind closed doors." She said, "You see a president that the rest of the world doesn't see. You see him when he's private, when he's sitting down and talking and concerned about things, and he's uniquely American. I mean, he's whip smart. He's got incredibly good instincts." And I wanted to make sure that the people saw it. And so when I wrote War by Other Means, I said, okay, I got it. His tweets were harsh. I understand that. And I understand he would punch back pretty hard. But I would say to people, okay, but look at our policies from immigration to trade to national security to what we did with the Space Force, whatever was out there. The policies that he drove were really, really good. In fact, when you look now at the current crisis we're in, which is coronavirus, the reason we had not 1, not 2, but 3 vaccines, more than any other nations combined, the only one that has put one out besides us is the Brits with AstraZeneca, and I don't count the Sinovac that came out of the Chinese and Sputnik that came out of Russia because nobody wants theirs. But I mean, he drove that, and he drove that through his tenacity and through his business acumen to make sure that the American people had it. And he told me one time, sitting there in the confines of the Oval Office, and it was exactly in this tone of voice. He said, I just want Americans to get better. I said, God, just go out there right now and say it exactly like that to the press. And he said, no, 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 because there's a leadership factor, and I want to show them that we're strong. But that's the way he cared. And you mentioned a comment, and I have to say this very reservedly, is, he has been married several times. He has children from each of his marriages, 3 marriages. Just all kids that from every one of the marriages adore him. They do. And when you look at all the way to Tiffany, when you look at Ivanka, and when you look at Jared, not Jared, but you look at Don, and you look at Eric, they all just really think the world of him. And they all came from different marriages that were out there. And I mean, he's really something. Then you look at Barron, who's incredible. He's, I think he's now 6'4", but I mean, he's a great athlete. He's a great kid. He was good to be around. And then you say, okay, there's got to be something about a dad. If all the kids adore him, and actually his wives love him as well, there's something there with the guy. And I wanted the American people to see that. And I wanted to write about that. And I wanted to say, okay, there is a different perspective from all the books that you see out there and all the harshness in the books. There's somebody that, I felt very comfortable being around. Not only as a former military guy, but somebody who'd been in business and then in the White House. But I think he served this nation well. And I wanted to get away from the rhetoric. And I said, I got away from the mean tweets. What I saw as a man, as a leader, and as a president, I thought it was important for the American people to see and hear.
Yeah, great stuff. War by Other Means. The link is in the description of today's podcast episode. Yeah, and Eric told me I think Barron now is taller than him. So, yeah, he's growing pretty quick. And just like you said, listen, it's a blended family. It's commonplace in America now. He's a shining example of that, I think, the way that his kids all respond to him. So now, obviously, we see people have been throwing shade at him from inside the White House. I know I was at the White House 12 times myself with the media trying to interview Trump. I was working with Stephanie Grisham to try to set up an interview with him. And now she's somebody that came out with her own book, openly admitted she didn't even vote for Donald Trump, and she was his press secretary. I mean, that's alarming. Now, she's not the only one that was on the inside that was part of this, that was anti-Trump. Did you see this? I mean, you were close to him. Did you guys have any idea that there were people right there working in the administration that were anti-Trump or against him, or that would come out and throw shade at him once the administration or once the presidency ended?
Well, the answer is it's yes or no. And let me go to the no first. First of all, I think people who work in administration and come out of the administration, kind of say, okay, you better be very, very reasonable when you write a book out there. And because, you can always talk about the salacious things that happen. Heck, they happen to everybody every single day. There's things probably in everybody's life, from running a red light to jaywalking, that you prefer people not see or talk about. And they're out there. And I say, you've been privy to the highest office in the land, working inside the White House, which is an incredible privilege. In fact, I used to tell the people in my organization, you ought to thank God every single day you come here. And the day this place gets old, or you don't think you're privileged to be here, is the day you need to leave and turn your badge in and go home. But there were always people in there and that kind of had other agendas going forward. And that, by the way, that happens in business world and military as well. And they pushed back because they said, well, I think this is the way we ought to go. And I used to remind everybody that you all never got a single electoral college votes. I didn't. Our job was to give him advice, and we give him the best advice we could. And once that advice was given, it was up to him to make the hard decisions, because that's what he gets paid for. He was elected president of the United States. And I tell the military guys, you better, if you're concerned about that, make sure you read Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, which says there's unitary commander-in-chief. He happens to be the president. But yeah, I saw some of that, because they always thought, well, I know better. No, you don't. You weren't elected. I told several chiefs of staff that, and told national security advisors as well, that's not your role. Your role is to give advice. So you see that, and by the way, I've seen similar things happen in the business world, and you have to remind people of where their station is, and that is not a negative statement, but when you're an advisor, that's your job. You're an advisor. That's it. And a lot of people forgot their role in the White House, and then when they left the White House, they write these salacious books, and they go, well, he didn't listen to me. He didn't have to. The fact is, you were an advisor. There's no requirement in his job description to listen to you. You weren't elected. He was. So I had, I used to battle with some of the people in the White House to remind them that who they were, how they got there, and that they supported the president and the people of the United States. And it was the inverse.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you wrote your book, War by Other Means, too. You served honorably, so it's good to get an honest report of what was going on inside. So props to you for that. Let me peel it back into you here as a dad for a minute, General. Obviously, hardened veteran here, tough disciplinarian, I would imagine. So what type of disciplinarian were you as a dad with the kids growing up? And is that different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
Yeah, well, when things got really bad, I'd say, Mom, this is your problem. It's really, you turn over the moms. Moms seem to really do a pretty good job with that. And pretty hardcore. Look, I think, you treat kids as kids. I mean, they grow up and they're going to make mistakes, and you have to, I mean, not robbing a bank, but I mean, they'll make mistakes, and it's part of the growing cycle. And I'd always like to have that patient level, and say, okay, this is where we're going to go. This is what we're going to do, and have respect for others. And, I always believed in the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated. And courtesy, I grew up my entire life. I don't care who it was. It was yes, sir, no, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Yeah, yeah, no, sir. Going forward, it was one of those where the family I grew up in, because those were the value sets that I was taught. And I just tried to push those, not push them, but, tell my kids it was the same way. We were kind of lucky growing up in the military, because at that time was such a very, very patriotic organization, and they kind of grew up living on military posts, and they saw what the military was like, and there was a value set there in the military that all the kids around us kind of had the same thing, and I think it was just important that we stayed together, and they saw that they knew there was an anchor in the house. It's sort of like somebody said, well, why did you retire in Arlington, Virginia? And I said, well, I wanted to keep a place where the kids could always come back to. It was like an anchor. And I think the kids wanted to have an anchor. It was the same way of growing up in life. They knew there was a value set. They knew that they could always, they could always come to me or their mom with the worst thing that could happen to them. Just, they knew that I wasn't going to throw them out of the house. And there were a couple of tough times with our kids. But they always said, we always knew we could come to you, and they weren't going to do something stupid, get mad at them and throw them out of the house, or turn them in or whatever it was, because it was always a learning cycle for them. And I think, I'm very proud of them. I'm proud of, I've got a great older son who's now in the private world doing a great job. My daughter got her PhD from Columbia University after going to West Point, deploying to Afghanistan and being in the Army, and got out and pursued a doctorate degree. And then my youngest son's in the military. He's currently deployed overseas. He's at Fort Riley, Kansas, a young company commander. And, I never forced any of them to go into the military. Two of them went to West Point. I didn't. I wasn't smart enough to get in. They went there, got their degrees, were in the military, and I never forced them into the military. They just said, we love the value set that we grew up in, and we wanted to continue to do that. Megan eventually got out, but she continued to service by working with veterans. In fact, her doctorate degree is basically focused in on veterans, and she wants to continue to have service to others. So I'm very proud of the family. It's a good value set, and I'm proud of them for hanging in with me, and still, we're still a pretty tight family. Feel pretty good about it.
And that's phenomenal, General. I honestly, like I said, going back to that fatherless crisis we got going on, I really believe that if we can strengthen our nuclear family units in this country, maybe bring some God back into focus, I think 90% of the problems we're seeing across our country would start to dissolve pretty quickly here. So I love what you stand for as far as the family goes. Now, how many years have you been married?
41. The other one, I got to be honest with you, I make sure I had it engraved inside my wedding ring just to make sure, I got it right here, and there it said, I just want to make sure it's in. But my wife always gets mad when I start to take it off. I said, I'm just kidding you. I can't put it on. And it's been great. I mean, it's, she's been the real anchor of my life, considered all the deployments I've had, and, putting up with 3 kids, raising 3 kids when I wasn't there. And we feel pretty good about the family set. Yeah, it was good. It was, she's the love of my life. I've spending those 41 years with her, and like any family unit, it goes, ups and downs, hard times, good times, tough times, I just give you one example. We nearly lost our daughter at birth, and, that was pretty hard to go through. My wife had cancer, she had breast cancer, and those were hard times to go through out there. But, as a family unit, we just hung in there and stood side by side.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm actually 41 years old, so you've been married my entire life. I'm married. I'm married 17 years myself. We have 4 kids, and you know what? It isn't always easy, and it's always at times I can look to guys like you that I admire that have been there, done that, stuck it out, and are that shining example for young couples out there all across America. So awesome to see. What's next for you here, General? Obviously, the book right now is out, War by Other Means. What kind of goals, projects? If Trump decides to run again, will you be involved in the administration? What's next for you?
Well, if Trump runs again, I'll be with him. I've said that to everybody. I really believe in the guy, and I talk to him occasionally. Well, actually, frequently. Just talked to him the other night. But we're part of I joined up and we created a 501c3, which is a nonprofit called America First Policy Institute, because what we wanted to do was keep the policies that we had in the last 4 years. Now, we thought we were pretty good policies, and continue to have a baseline for that. In fact, we talked to Senator Lindsey Graham. He said, you guys are actually the think tank for the next administration if it comes in a Republican administration. It gives a lot of political entities a baseline going forward. It's what the Republicans have never had before, because we're not a huge nonprofit like your Hoover or your Heritage, but we're really, really focused in on the American people. Part of our preamble is, remember the first three words of the Constitution, we the people, and we're focused in on them. So, we've got 100 people now, on the payroll, putting in a lot of policy papers. And for anybody out there listening, you go to America First Policy Institute. We're there. You can pull up and see what we're doing. And then I run the national security element in AFPI. So it keeps me busy. It keeps me off the streets. And it's a lot of fun. Forces my brain to keep working. And as my wife has told me, she told me 41 years ago, I married you for better or worse, not for lunch. Get out, find a job, do work. So I do that. So it's fun.
Yeah, great stuff, General. All right, listen, last thing I want to hit you with here. I'd love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say have patience, because there's going to be times when, first of all, when you have a firstborn, the first thing I remember going back, and then the second and third, am I ever going to sleep the night again? Ever? Because you never think you are. And it's a shared responsibility. And have the patience, because there will be good days and bad days, and understand that, and that every day that you have with your child is a blessing from God, and that you need to help guide that child forward. And patience is a key virtue to have it, because the child will make mistakes, just like you made as a parent. I made, going forward in life. And I think you need to understand that and give them the best guidance you can. Let him grow. Let he or she grow out there. And that's one of the things I always did with my kids is, look, I know you're going to make, I never told them that. I know you're going to make mistakes, but I wasn't going to throw them out with the bathwater. I was going to say, okay, let's learn from that. And so if you've got the patience and the faith in that they're going to grow and be something good, I think that they're going to turn out quite well. Just have the confidence that they're going to be okay, as long as you're alongside of them, and you're kind of your hand on the shoulder as they continue to grow. That you're going to be there for them if things ever go bad, and have faith that things will turn out okay.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. The link to the book and the charity is in the description of today's podcast episode. General Kellogg, you're first class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I do appreciate it very much.